Good evening, everyone. Oh, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. My name is Jasper Dent. I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson. This event is being held on Treaty 6 territory. This is the land of the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota, and homeland of the Métis. It's my pleasure to welcome you all tonight to the launch of Joanne Jackson's new mystery novel, Sunset Lake Resort. A few quick notes before we begin. This event is being live streamed, so please just be mindful of the web camera up to the right in front over here. And I'd also like to take this moment to remind you all to silence your phones because there's always one person who's forgotten. Now that we've done that, I would like to introduce Joanne Jackson. Joanne is the author of 3 novels, starting with The Wheaton in 2019, and followed by the best-selling A Snake in the Raspberry Patch, which won the Best Crime Novel Set in Canada in 2023, and was also shortlisted for the Saskatchewan Book Awards. And now she has a new novel, Sunset Lake Resort. I'm very excited to read it, and I would like to ask Joanne to come up here. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Those of you that know me know that I'm quite, oh, sorry. I'm a shy, introverted person. And I tend to cry when I talk. If you've been to one of my launches before, I choke up really easily. I come by it naturally. Our mother did the same thing. My sisters are here tonight. And but I doesn't happen when I read. So I've written everything, I typed everything out, and I'm just going to read you. And then I'm going to read you the portion of the first chapter. Okay, and then when I'm done, there'll be a question Q&A if anybody's interested in asking any questions, or you can just come up here and I'll sign your book for you. Unfortunately, we don't have any more copies. They're sold out of A Snake in the Raspberry Patch. They sold the last one tonight, but there's more on order. And if you just leave your name at the front desk, they'll save you a copy if you want to buy one. Okay, let's start. And this is my last one. I've done 4 launches and 4 radio interviews, and this is my last one, so I'm going to go home and have a glass of wine tonight. Thank you to Stonehouse Publishing and Netta Johnson for once again believing in me. Thank you to McNally Robinson for hosting another book launch, and thank you to everyone for coming to see me in person and for watching on YouTube. If you've never been to one of my book launches before, you know that I'm kind of shy, and promoting my books is not something I enjoy. I think it's because I'm trying to sell something that I've created. But in the past few days, I've been told by people who came to the launches in both Edmonton and Calgary, and by people who have already read the book, that I need to own my place here before you, that I am a writer. I hope choking up. That I am a writer, and my writing speaks for itself. And while I know that I can't appeal to everyone, I hope some of you feel the same way. In the 1930s, my husband's grandma, a strong, independent woman, purchased property at Emma Lake in northern Saskatchewan. She then proceeded to have a cabin built, renting it out as a means of making extra money, as she was a single mom. It's grandma's story that inspired this book. In Sunset Lake Resort, Ruby's father dies, and instead of leaving her the millions of dollars that she expected, he leaves her a rundown cabin in the northern part of the province at a place called Sunset Lake. Ruby's husband, Steve, Ruby's husband of 35 years, upon hearing he isn't inheriting a fortune, decides to abandon his marriage, forcing Ruby, late in life, at age 60, I think she was 63, I can't remember, to make her own way in the world. Ruby travels to the cabin her father left her and feels an inexplicable draw to the place. And even though she has no experience living outside the city, living alone, paying the bills, doing all the things her husband did, she decides to move to the lake. She figures out how to sell her house in the city, how to invest her money, how to hire a contractor so she can have the cabin, which may or may not be haunted, renovated, learns to drive on icy roads and makes friends and even encounters a bear. In other words, she learns that it's never too late to reinvent herself. While on the road to her newfound independence, Ruby discovers, with the help of Cecilia Johnson, the original owner of the cabin, who died under mysterious circumstances, the reason why her father left her the cabin in the first place. I'm going to read for you tonight the portion of the first chapter where Ruby is burying her dad. Her two aunts are in front of her gossiping as they walk across the cemetery towards the plot. Can't believe what a witch she is. Aunt Marjorie, Mom's youngest sister, says this so quietly that Aunt Bernice, the second oldest, has trouble hearing. What? Bernice says, cupping her hand around her ear. A witch, Marjorie says louder. I can't believe what a witch she is. And I only say witch instead of, she whispers, the B word, because Aunt Marjorie takes up the thought. We're standing on consecrated ground and you wouldn't want a bolt of lightning to strike you dead. Aunt Marjorie nods solemnly at the two of them, then looks to the skies, and they make the sign of the cross. Both women are unmarried, Aunt Marjorie having been a widow for the past 50 years, and Aunt Bernice never having married. They have lived together since Aunt Marjorie's husband passed away in 1967. Now, like an old married couple who've been living together too long, though not always in agreement, they tend to finish each other's sentences. Other than the usual childhood diseases, each has remained healthy well into their 80s, and they're able to walk across the lawn unaided, which is more than I can say for many of Dad's peers attending his funeral today. All around me, I see bent backs and gray heads hanging between slouched shoulders, pushing walkers towards the plot where the priest is already standing. Having left the comfort of the air-conditioned church to venture to the cemetery in the suppressive heat, we are now following Julia, my father's second wife, and my aunt's topic of conversation. On second thought, Marjorie says, dabbing her top lip with a handkerchief, I can believe it. She had it planned from the very beginning, didn't she? Bernice nods her head in agreement. Had Arthur change his will the first week they were married. Cut Ruby out like she never existed, his own daughter. Even had the locks changed on the doors. I wish Ruby were more assertive, Marjorie says, but our brother-in-law, she nods at my father's coffin suspended over the hole we're approaching, never gave his daughter anything. No self-confidence, no encouragement, barely any attention. Our dear departed sister tried, Aunt Bernice says, but Arthur ruled the roost in that family. Men, she says, shaking her head, to think the world will fall apart if they're not in charge. I remember when our father would lock us in a room to keep us from going out with boys, Marjorie said. You always snuck out the window. Of course I did, Bernice says. I knew Dad would never figure it out. He assumed females didn't have a brain to think with. I got pretty good at shinning down that drain pipe. You'd think growing up in Arthur was always arrogant. You'd think growing up in an orphanage would have made him more empathetic. Why was he never adopted, Bernice asks. Apparently he wasn't a very attractive baby, Marjorie says. Ears too big and a bad case of eczema that didn't go away until he was 2. As a toddler, he got a head cold. He got head cold after head cold, walked around with a snot-covered nose until he was 6 years old. By the time he grew into his ears and stopped being sickly, there were probably too many newborns to choose from, and potential parents just passed him by. He lived at that orphanage until he was 18. It's surprising he became such a handsome man, considering how homely he was as a child. Likely the reason he was obsessed with money, Bernice comments, and Marjorie scowls at her. I don't mean being homely, she gently swats her sister's forearm. I mean growing up in poverty. I suppose his good looks combined with his quest for wealth are what attracted our sister to him. After all, a woman wants to be looked after when she's married. You're dating yourself, Marge. Do you know that many women nowadays make more money than their husbands? I wish I was still young and I'd have the world by the tail. Marjorie pats her sister's hand. I swear, dear sister, you were born in the wrong decade. You had so much drive when you were young. Thank you, Marjorie, Bernice says. Unfortunately, back then, women with drive were called pushy, while men with drive were called ambitious. Arthur had drive, Aunt Marjorie says, returning to the subject of my father. But that's all he had. He certainly didn't know how to be a parent. Our poor niece, she was bound to rebel. Marge, Aunt Bernice says, what I did was rebel. What Ruby did was look for a way out by marrying the first person who proposed to her, much like her own mother did. Not that being a wife and mother is easy, it most definitely is not. Why do you think I never waded into that particular pool? But Ruby really hasn't tasted life, has she? First a prisoner in her father's house, her dad afraid someone would marry her for his wealth, then cooped up in her husband's house, no outside job, no real world experience, waiting for her father to die so she could inherit his money. And now, Bernice whispers, he's denied his daughter even that. Inheriting that money would have given her some independence from that husband of hers. And in the end, Arthur left it all to a gold digger. Catching the last word, Julia turns her head and squints at the procession of mourners following her across the lawn. Bernice flaps her handkerchief at the woman who attempts to smile, though with all the Botox injection she's had, her heavily made-up face remains a mask of insensitivity. She turns back to the business of walking to her husband's graveside without twisting an ankle. You need to talk more quietly, Aunt Marjorie says. Not that I care if she nods at Julia, hears you or not, but our niece is within earshot. Bernice turns to look at me not 5 steps behind, and I count small blessings that my family is at the back of this procession, too far away to hear what's being said. It's not like he didn't leave her anything, Marjorie said. He gave her a cabin. Bernice snorts. At a lake so far north, she'd be able to visit Santa Claus on the weekends. He also gave her $300,000, of which that husband of hers will take control. And compared to the billion she was supposed to inherit, that's practically pocket change. Bernice's voice is once again becoming loud, and I begin to wonder if she's intentionally wanting Julia to hear. What was our brother-in-law thinking? Some part of his body was doing the thinking, but it certainly wasn't his brain. Marjorie says as we watch Julia in her tight black dress place a rose on the shiny black coffin, then wipe away a crocodile tear. I wonder what Ruby's husband has to say about her getting so little, Bernice says. At least the will said that he can't touch the cabin. That's one good thing Arthur did. Not unless he talks Ruby into selling and wooing her out of her money, Bernice says. And you can bet he'll try. Everyone knows that Arthur's money was the reason he married Ruby in the first place. There's nothing I haven't heard before on my husband marrying me for my father's money. If I'm honest with myself, I likely suspected it long before we were married, but at age 28, when anxious to get out from under my father's thumb, I convinced myself that Steve really did love me and I him. So I accepted his proposal. In hindsight, I wanted out of my childhood home so badly. I didn't care how I got there. For the past 35 years, I've tolerated my marriage for the simple reason I'm afraid to face the world alone. There have been joyful days, like when my mother held my babies for the first time, or when my own grandchildren were born, but more hard days than happy. Days when I couldn't hide my disappointment at the path I'd chosen. Steve, on the other hand, has been able to bury his anger at being trapped in this loveless marriage by assuring himself that each day he put in, he was one step closer to being a wealthy man. And 2 days ago, at the reading of the will, he found out exactly how much I'd inherited, and the veneer was peeled back. He couldn't conceal his anger any longer. His knuckles white on the steering wheel, rage prevented him from saying more than 2 words all the way home. I still haven't told the kids about the will. I know Robert in particular has been keen on becoming financially secure when I die, and I'm not sure how he'll take the news. Probably much like his dad did. My plans are to tell him tonight after the funeral. I used the funeral card with Dad's face staring at me to fan myself as I pulled my hair away from my thin neck, my thoughts turning to sitting on a beach, the breeze of the water I lost my place, cooling the sweat that's soaking my burning skin. For years, I asked Steve if we could buy a cabin at a lake, but he always balked, saying we could barely afford the house, let alone a cabin. Maybe now, with Dad's gift, I could finally have my dream of spending my summers at a lake. The women stopped talking as we arrived at the grave and stand with the other mourners on one side of the casket, while me, Steve, and our children joined Julia and her children on the other side. My eyes drift across the cemetery to where Mom is buried, towards the spot where she and Dad bought plots side by side more than 50 years ago. Julia, of course, said no to burying her husband there and bought 2 plots on this side of the well-manicured lawn as far away from Dad's first wife as she could. I could practically hear Mom rolling over in her grave. Thank you for coming here today to celebrate the life of Arthur Daniels, the minister says, a man who knew no boundaries when it came to giving up himself and his time, a man who accomplished greatness in his chosen field of architecture, and a man who shared his wealth generously with his family. He nods at Julia. A man who in the autumn of his years is fortunate enough to find the love of his life. Aunt Marjorie snorts, then dabs her lip with a tissue. I glance at Julia. I'm sure she gave specific instructions to the minister to not mention Mom. She hates it when my mother or myself are mentioned in front of her, referring to pretend Dad was never married before, that I was never born. It was a lucky day when Arthur met Julia at the support group, the minister says. Stony broke, that's what she was, Brittany says out of the corner of her mouth. Her husband passed away years ago. She went there specifically to troll for a rich widower. When they wed, the minister continues over Bernice's voice. They didn't know that they'd have only 3 years together before Arthur passed. They may not have known, Bernice continues, but everyone knew that's what she was counting. Marjorie elbows her sister. If anyone has anything to say, the minister says, and Julia looks pointedly at Bernice, please share it with us at this time. There is nothing but silence as Aunt Bernice smiles innocently at the two of them. Then without further ado, he says as he sprinkles holy water in the casket, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The cemetery worker presses the button, lowering the coffin into the hole. You'll have to read it if you want to know what happens next. I don't know if anybody's read this yet or not, but are there any questions? Hi, Carol.
I have read,
Okay, okay,
Yes.
good.
but I can't say anything now because
You
I can't say one thing.
can't ask.
I can't say one.
Okay,
I also have a microphone to bring around for questions
it's
so that
okay.
people online can hear as well.
I just want to say that it's a marvelous book.
oh, thank you,
It
Carol.
is really good.
Thank you.
Like if I had to put the three together, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Better than raspberry.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Raspberry. Thank you very much. That's good. I'm glad. No other questions?
Joanne, how long did it take?
This one only took me a year, not even a year. I don't know why. Raspberry Patch was over a course of 10 years, but off and on. The final version of Snake and the Raspberry Patch took me about a year to a year and a half. And the Wheaton, my first book, took me 2.5 years. Yeah, it was a lot.
But your second one's probably your favorite.
The second one so far is my favorite, but I have finished another one now that I'm trying to get published, and I like it too. So we'll see. Yeah. Anything else? If nobody has any questions, I can do. I can sign some books if you want to.
Do you have a name for your third one? Your fourth one?
It's called the yes. I don't know if I want to say it.
You might change your mind.
It's about women or not women, senior citizens solving a 100-year-old mystery. Mhm.
Cool.
I read about old people because I'm old.
You're not that old.
I know how they think. Yes,
I'm not 100, that's for sure.
because we had our mother, yeah, from mom. I know, but mom was in many homes over the years. Well, a couple, and you learn how old people talk. Yes. Okay. No questions. Okay, girl. Sorry, I should have said your name.
That's okay. How do the characters come to you? Like if you're sitting and typing and you're trying to keep ahead of,
Right.
how do they just sort of suddenly?
Sometimes they just appear, like in this book, Jerry, the 101-year-old man. All of a sudden, there he was. Honest to goodness, he was just there. I needed someone to relate the backstory. I needed that in the book, and there he was, sitting outside the grocery store. Oh, by the way, Louise Carnation, that was my mom's name. That's why I called it Louise Carnation. Oh, hi, Maureen. See, you got the two Marines. Both my Marines came late. My neighbor and my daughter. Yeah, there was Jerry sitting outside the grocery store. Yeah, and he just came to me. I don't know. I had an idea. This book started out to be an entirely different thing. It was going to be like a home renovation book, like a comedy kind of thing about renovating a home and all the stupid things that can happen. I even contacted our contractor who redid our house a few years ago to ask him if he had any anecdotes that he could tell me, but then it didn't end up like that anymore. Things change, books change from where you start them to where they end up. They change all the time.
I have another question.
Okay.
I'm just full of
You're full
because
of
I've read it. But
Yes.
did you feel like I felt that the environment where the lake was, everything that was going on around in the environment, it's almost like another character. Did you feel that when you were writing
I
it?
suppose. Well,
Like
my husband and well, like I said, grandma had the cabin built. Tom's grandma had a cabin built in the 30s, and it's still in the family, and so we all use it, and that's where that came from. So I suppose it is a character. Yes,
Yeah.
it's part of Saskatchewan.
yeah.
Yeah, just like Raspberry Patch, the town, Willows Bend, was a character because it was part of Saskatchewan. The Carrigan bushes and
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
I guess I don't want to blow it either for anybody who
Yes.
hasn't read the book, but I always kind of wondered, and I may have asked you this previously, I can't remember, but like that there's three kind of major twists, turns in my mind in this book.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious to know, like, do you think of that when you start the book, or does that just come as you?
Some of them come to me as I'm writing, and some of them were there to begin with. Yes. Missy
I didn't want to
was
say.
there to begin with.
Okay.
Yes, Missy
Okay.
was there. That gives nothing away. Missy was there to begin with. But what's the other ones? Oh yes, why her dad gave her a cat, gave her the cat.
Yes, yeah,
That didn't come to me until I was pretty close to that chapter.
okay.
And I kept thinking, and I can't say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say that. But yeah,
It's an amazing story though.
thank you. Thank you very much. Hey, McKenna.
What is the hardest part of the process for you?
Moving the story forward. That's an easy question to answer. Once I have 80, 90,000 words down on page, 100,000 words on a page, I love the editing part. I love that part because you know where the story is going and what's going to happen. It's getting those 80 to 100,000 words down on a page and knowing trying to figure out what happens next. What happens next. My granddaughter's at the back of the room, and when my 15-year-old granddaughter was maybe in grade 2 or 3, she asked me, I think I can't remember what I was rating there. No, I might have been. Yeah, I think I was rating for about 12, 13, 14 years. She said, what happens next, Grandma? I'm writing a short story. What happens next? And I said, that's the hardest part about writing. What happens next? That's the question. Yeah. When I started this, I knew where it was beginning, and I had a vague idea where it was ending. It's all the stuff in the middle that's difficult. Yes. Yes. Good question. We okay? Anybody have any questions? We're good to go. If you want me to sign your book, I'll be sitting right here. Thank you very much for coming, everybody. I really appreciate it.